saying this is like, here I am. I mean, my name is Tania. Well, my name is Tania Culver Humphrey. And I say Culver because it's who I always was, and I still am. My dad molested me, sexually abused me starting from when I was preschool, kindergarten age, up through into high school. He was the co-founder of Mercy Corps. And I don't know what else to say.
Mercy Corps is one of the world's preeminent humanitarian relief organizations. It was founded by Ellsworth Culver and his friend Dan O'Neill in 1981 and has a presence in more than 40 countries. It takes in hundreds of millions of dollars every year in government funds, as well as donations, grants, and other gifts. It's highly regarded worldwide and describes its mission as alleviating suffering, poverty, and oppression by helping build secure, productive, and just communities.
This would be a real little souvenir.
Inside his Mercy Corps office, Ellsworth Culver fingers a gift from a friend.
They always wear this. They're required to wear it.
A button featuring the Great Leader, worn by the North Korean ambassador to the UN before he pinned it on Culver's lapel.
Ellsworth Culver was the president of Mercy Corps for nearly a decade and continued to serve as its public face as a senior vice president until 2005. He was widely seen as a benevolent force for good, but his lifetime of humanitarian work has until now obscured what his daughter and others say was a much darker reality.
I knew that, her dad was, I didn't know what his business was at the time, but, he was somebody important.
Her dad worked for Mercy Corps, was a big, head of Mercy Corps, started something like that. He was a big figure there.
It didn't seem very warm, really, or inviting. There was that undercurrent of uncomfortable interaction that for 14-year-old girls.
He was never an approachable, friendly man, never. Tania said that he was very different at work. He was outgoing and friendly and personable. People really liked him. He was not like that at all every time I saw him. I kind of felt things weren't right there, but I never imagined that they were as bad as they were.
He would come into my room at night and he would rape me. He would sodomize me. I remember holding on to my Raggedy Ann doll. He did that.
Humphrey says she was so young when the abuse began that she can't remember a time without it. It didn't end until sometime in high school. The Oregonian spent 10 months investigating Humphrey's allegations and has interviewed her multiple times as she's revealed her experiences with disturbing detail. We've tracked down friends of Humphrey's from childhood and high school. 8 of them said she told them her father was abusing her. 3 of them said they witnessed the abuse, and at least 1 said Ellsworth Culver also abused her. We've reviewed Humphrey's correspondence with Mercy Corps, extensive medical and counseling records, and reports from Oregon's Child Welfare Agency. The number of witnesses is a rarity in cases like this, as is the trove of documentation.
So I'm gonna get all of the things that I've saved, which is a lot of things. Things from my childhood and journals and other things that I've saved to bring them downstairs. Lots of boxes. Lots of boxes.
There were always these boxes that Tania had. Her journals, where she talked about her abuse as a young child. All her other things surrounding this time period.
How long have you been collecting all these things?
All my life. All my life. But I've never seen it all together at once. I guess that's kind of like my life, too. Like everything's always been so hidden and separate, and broken apart.
Humphrey describes her childhood as defined by two forces, Mercy Corps and sexual abuse by her father. From the time she was a preschooler, those things were intertwined, the two sides of her father converging and crushing her. In the Culver home, she says nothing mattered more than Mercy Corps, and protecting its image was everything.
I kind of want to bring this painting down. Both of these paintings are really important to me. This one is me. So it's like a safe moment, but there's all this that's being held back. But she can pretend, find a place, God's voice.
Humphrey felt compelled to save everything she could, documents, journals, her own poetry and artwork, as proof that her experiences were real. Her repeated disclosures did nothing to stop her father, she said. Her voice did not seem to matter. Not to her mother, who denies knowing about the abuse, though Humphrey says she told her. Not to some of the other people who knew but didn't act. Not to the state, which received 2 reports of abuse by Culver but did not intervene. And not to Mercy Corps, the organization co-founded by her father to help vulnerable people who are suffering.
We cannot undo the traumas you experienced in the past, but in the future, Mercy Corps people will be treated with fairness and respect, and your sacrifice will bring blessing to not only the staff, but to the recipients of our programs internationally. We hope you will continue to find your own healing so you too can move forward into a better life than you have experienced. It's not what happens to us, it's what we do with what happens to us. It's not what happens to us, it's what we do with what happens to us. I don't think my sacrifice brought blessing to any of their staff or any of the recipients of their programs internationally. My sacrifice allowed them to keep a sexual predator around. How can you go out and help women and children when you had to sacrifice one in order to do it?
That letter was sent to Humphrey in 1994 by Raymond Vath, then chairman of the Mercy Corps Board of Directors. By then, it had been almost 2 years since Mercy Corps first contacted Humphrey. Her allegations had been reviewed by Vath and fellow Mercy Corps executives Dan O'Neill and Bob Newell. All 3 men were Ellsworth Culver's professional associates. After we pressed Mercy Corps for answers 25 years later, the current CEO apologized if his organization in any way caused Humphrey pain, but stood by the board's initial inquiry, calling it thorough.
I met Tania in 9th grade at St. Mary's Academy. You know, we were all just 9th graders. And then as the year progressed, and we got closer, she told me and her other friend that her dad had been inappropriate with her on multiple occasions.
I kind of was savvy and knew what she was talking about. I knew her key words that she was saying that made me go, oh, okay, you're being sexually abused.
She was saying that her dad was touching her in her sleep at home. And being 14, I didn't really know how to deal with that. I don't think I even really wanted to listen to it. It was kind of like one of those things you just don't talk about. I mean, that was sort of my thought anyways. Just like, oh, this is happening, but we're just not going to talk about it. Towards the end of the year, she started to lose a lot of weight.
She came inpatient as an anorexic. I didn't suggest to people with an eating disorder, I didn't say, oh, were you sexually abused? She began talking about him as an abuser more like along a physical line very quickly, I would say the first week. About the time she left the hospital, I reported to CPS, which I was bound by law to do. I didn't realize that CPS really didn't investigate it. Looking at the notes that Tania has, as an adult, received, it looked like they really didn't do anything.
Records show that McIntosh's report was one of two the state received regarding Humphrey's abuse by her father. One was marked valid and was referred to the Lake Oswego Police Department, but no further documentation exists. For unknown reasons, those complaints went nowhere.
This is Tania Humphrey.
Hi, Tania. Thank you for calling.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
I hope that I can answer your questions.
I hope so too.
Of course, they're just hard to answer because practice is just a lot different than it is now.
I am really trying to do my best to understand. There's two reports there, and why wasn't there any intervention?
We can't tell from the documentation that's in archives what did or didn't happen on your case.
It just says
But there was a credible disclosure.
that there was a credible disclosure.
I wish that I could answer your question around why didn't the state make decision A instead of decision B, but I don't have those answers. All I have is what is written here.
With what you know here in the reports that were made, how would a case like this be handled today with today's procedure?
Well, certainly if we, just generally speaking, we would need to interview that child, any other children living in the family home, the parents. Law enforcement would be working the case in partnership with us. It would be a comprehensive assessment, and we would, make a decision not only just around did the abuse occur or did it not, but more importantly, whether or not child is safe.
So, I got to tell you, it's fairly emotional for me to hear that because, and I know this is not, you were not there and you did not do this. But, I was definitely not safe and a lot more abuse continued to happen. It feels like a little bit shocking and it's hard to even absorb the fact that things could be so dramatically different that literally nothing happened.
I think that where we're at a disadvantage is that we don't know what did or didn't happen because the documentation about that assessment doesn't exist. I wish that I had those answers and I just don't. I know that that's not what she wanted to hear, and I wish that I could answer the questions that you have. If I'm being honest, I have the same questions, and I can't find the answers in what I've read.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Humphrey's friend Michelle Green was a regular guest at the Culver home when she and Tania were in high school at St. Mary's Academy in Portland. Some of Humphrey's friends say they were excluded by her father after initial meetings when he grilled them on their home lives. But Green, who says she had no father figure, was allowed and even encouraged to visit.
I always wanted to get out of my house. Once he met me and knew a little bit about my family home, he was okay for me to come around Tania and to their house. Multiple times of spending the night, I had woken up and I saw him leaning over the bed. I think she just laid there and allowed things to happen. I always took it like an out-of-body kind of thing. And he would be there, standing at the edge of the bed, on the side of the bed, touching with an erection.
I'm asking this, but I'm not suggesting that this is your fault. But I wonder why you went back there knowing that this was not a safe place.
Because I was afraid for Tania, and I wanted to protect her. So I wanted him, if he was going to mess with anybody, I can take it. I'll be fine. Well, I don't want her to think that it's her fault. But he did do, a lot of things and make me touch, and he touched, and...
He made you touch him?
Yeah.
His penis?
Mm-hmm. And he got to touch me. Well, I let him because I had no other choice. One of the times that he wanted the oral sex was when he was driving me home, and he had pulled down, it was near my mom's house, and it was at a parking lot. He put my hand on his penis, and I held it, and this is with it out. And that's all I would do. I was too nervous, and somehow I got out of not having to perform any of that. But I wanted him to stop there, so I allowed myself to just touch it a little bit more, and I feel really gross and horrible about saying that. But I didn't want him to make me put my mouth on there, and I'd rather rub his penis until he could finish doing what he had to do. And I've been nervous to even say any of that. So yeah. But that's, I've never told Tania that. But, that was really bad.
That was intense. Just knowing everything that's happened and what will from this. My dad kept trying to get me to sit on his lap too. I'm just like not interested. I can't help but watch it and see that reality and then know the rest of it all at the same time. It's like I know everything that's happening in me at that moment. I just don't want to touch your leg. I don't want to be on your leg. Like it just makes me overwhelmed. I'm furious, kind of. Like how do you do that to somebody like that little? Like to know it's actually happening to me, and had already happened to me, and I can see my resilience too. My dad makes me want to vomit watching that, but that's okay.
Humphrey said by the time she was in college, her father's sexual abuse had stopped, but she remained haunted by her experience and in need of help. She joined a support group for women who had survived sexual abuse in their teens.
She came in to work with me as a counselor, but she also joined our recovery program. I didn't immediately know that her father had abused her sexually, but I did know that home was not safe. She had heard that she was not being honest so often that it takes a while, and the details began more and more to unfold.
Humphrey said she ultimately disclosed the identity of her abuser to members of a prayer group she was also attending. While she thought this would remain confidential, it did not. Soon after, she said she got a call from a member of the Mercy Corps board who asked if the allegations were true. When she said yes, this appears to have set the organization's internal review of Ellsworth Culver into motion. Humphrey said she was asked to turn over her medical records, journal entries, and other evidence that would back up her account.
She called me and said she wanted me to release the records to Mercy Corps. At the time that I released the records, I did this summary for Mercy Corps to highlight what had concerned me the most. And her memories at the time included fondling of her crotch, fondling of her breast, chest at an early age. She was forced to kiss him on the lips with some tongue involvement by him, and she had to do it over and over until she got it right. She remembered being tied to a bed, hands and feet spread eagle, and feeling violated, dirty, and terribly saddened. And I said very strongly that she needed to have legal counsel herself and that she was entitled to that and that they were irresponsible if they didn't make sure that happened.
During this time, Humphrey was taken in by another family while Mercy Corps was looking into her allegations. She stayed there for more than 3 years, sharing many late-night conversations with Kim Weber after Weber's husband and kids had gone to bed.
A lot of it was hard for me even to hear and to absorb and to process, everything that happened to her. But it was real. I knew that she was truthful, and there was no question in my mind ever. I didn't even know how she could function, but she did. She's a strong person.
As part of Mercy Corps' review, Dan O'Neill, Raymond Vath, and Bob Newell interviewed Humphrey in person. She was accompanied by Pam Fotz and Kim Weber, but did not have a lawyer. The interview was held at the Davis Wright Tremaine law firm, and Humphrey recalls the Mercy Corps officials referring to it as her deposition.
They kept us waiting in the waiting room for about 30 or 40 minutes. She's getting more and more frightened by the minute. They marched in their big bully suits and attitudes and really did a number on her.
I remember we were in a room and there was a lawyer across this big table, and then I was sitting there with her and Tania was there, and then it must have been Pam on the other side. It wasn't cordial.
They were just attacking her words. They were attacking what she said. They were attacking her character. They were not there to hear the truth. They were there to protect Mercy Corps and all of their reputations. They were there to protect their arses.
I remember the feeling of having to defend that it wasn't just an accident, that there wasn't an accidental rubbing up against somebody or something. It was under my underwear. It was not, I remember that being a specific thing, and talking about being in his bed and him being behind me and rubbing up next to me and pushing himself up to me. And I don't know if I said exactly into me. I told them enough. It was too scary to talk about. Isn't putting their hands under your underwear and bad enough? Isn't that supposed to be enough?
I just looked at her and said, Tania, we need to be done here. I held her up as we walked out because she was just so powerfully destroyed by how they had handled it. I've had a lot of experiences with devastating things that clients have experienced, but I have to say that that's one of the most anger-producing. Boasting about all the good things, well, there is no good thing good enough to make up for the character defects that will do the things he did to her.
I was washing the car, just washing the car. I was probably 12 or 13. This picture is hard to show. Not really a picture a dad would normally take. One of the hardest things to deal with about this is that my dad took photos of me, pornographic photos of me, naked or partially naked, in positions that were sexual, and I always had the Polaroid camera around. The hardest part about this is that the other stuff happened, and I can try to tell myself, I'm safe now, it's over, it's done. But with this, there's these photos that I don't know. I knew he had them. I know he looked at them. I don't know who has them. I don't know who's seen them. I don't know how many people have seen them. My experiences and my body in those pictures could still be looked at, could still be used. Like I'm participating against my will still, like trauma that just keeps on happening.
Mercy Corps ended its review after about 2 years, saying in a letter to Humphrey that it had completed what it called a rather careful evaluation. It said it was pursuing a redemptive approach with her father and makes vague references to Culver's apparent dysfunctional influence and his daughter's past trauma. It makes no mention of abuse. Culver was reassigned, but continued to travel the world in the organization's name.
Nobody did anything about it. I guess that was one of the hardest things for me to wrap my mind around. What, nobody did anything? Who is this guy that no one would, turn him in or say? Anyway, it was really hard.
They need to be accountable for what they have done and not done. They could have helped her. Why didn't they, if they really care about people in other parts of the world? Your mission starts at home.
We move freely around the community. We go in and out of the marketplace. We find it quite possible to get about and do our work.
Mercy Corps ensured Culver was free to keep working with people in troubled regions around the globe, even after his daughter told them he'd sexually abused her. We don't know if Mercy Corps received sexual abuse complaints about Culver from anyone else, including refugees he encountered in his work. Mercy Corps officials didn't respond when we asked if they'd received other reports of abuse.
Tania's room was down this hallway, and the bathroom was there on the one end of the house, and her dad's office was also there. It had brown carpet, dark brown carpet. He had a big dark brown desk. And I remember Tania, we were talking about the art or pictures, and she went in there, she was gonna show me something. And in the top drawer, there were a bunch of pictures, 3x5 or whatever they were, of girls, refugee kind of girls, young, naked, knowing who her dad is. I'm like, oh, this is like National Geographic, because that's what I related naked, brown-skinned people with. And then I remember thinking, no, this isn't like that. It was more explicit, legs spread. And this is kind of graphic, but I remember like very pink vaginas. None of those pictures were boys. They were all young girls. And I remember being very nervous and that we shouldn't be in there. And, Tania shuffled things up and we got out of there, and like, that was it.
In 2005, Ellsworth Culver died. His funeral was covered extensively by the media. A front-page obituary ran in the Oregonian. Mercy Corps kept a glowing tribute to Culver on its website. In 2018, Humphrey's husband Chris noticed that Mercy Corps had publicized a new internal ethics policy. He and Tania reached out, asking the organization to take another look at its original inquiry into Tania's father.
Mercy Corps completed an investigation about child sexual abuse. They did it kind of under the table, they didn't have any reports. They didn't really tell anybody, Tanya, what happened. It just sort of disappeared. But now there's this whole process, and they want to investigate ethics, internal ethics.
The Humphreys were at first encouraged by their correspondence with Mercy Corps, but the tone quickly shifted from cooperative to cool. At one point during their exchange, a Mercy Corps lawyer told the couple that the organization had no interest in what he called relitigating Humphrey's allegations. The couple felt they had reached a dead end.
I think it would be helpful for us to discuss just what it is you think Mercy Corps can do now to help your wife gain closure on whatever occurred between her and her father and her family some 24 years ago. And he basically said, well, we asked around, we looked around, we did a thorough review. Our conclusion is there's no documents whatsoever, there's no records. This was apparently an official investigation of their president for child sexual abuse. We had a hard time believing, well, how could they not have any kind of records or memory or what have you of this?
I lost so much from that. I mean, I lost my family. I was treated with no dignity or respect at all. I was even told that there's a sacrifice for them. It's unconscionable what they did and how they did it. They stand as humanitarians to help women and children around the world. That's what they stand for. People in need, vulnerable people. And that's how they treated me. Did you guys see that I had the birdhouses out over here? Okay.
No, I did not see that.
You didn't see it?
I did.
You can decorate them, and you can also use the stuff that we collected. Can you see? I can't even see. I need my glasses. Oh, that's so pretty. That's so pretty.
Tania Humphrey has made a life for herself despite childhood trauma most people couldn't imagine. The Oregonian sought comment from Bob Newell, Dan O'Neill, and Raymond Vath. We made repeated requests to speak to them, but they declined. They also didn't respond to our written questions. Eventually, Mercy Corps CEO Neil Kenny Geyer sent us a statement calling Humphrey's allegations horrific. We are deeply sorry for any pain Ms. Humphrey has endured, he said. We are sorry if in any way, 25 years ago or more recently, we contributed to her pain. Kenny Geyer pledged that an external review of how the organization responded to Humphrey last year would eventually be undertaken. As a relief organization, Mercy Corps has undeniably made a significant impact on regions in crisis and helped people in need. But the harm that can be traced to its origin raises troubling questions about what it was willing to sacrifice in service of that mission.
This is my old neighborhood. This is where I grew up. And I used to go down this path. I used to go down the path to hide and to escape. So I always felt like I was lost. I felt that feeling of being lost all the time. Like I need to go back and find her, that little girl, and find her and save her. Like I felt like I couldn't save her, like she was lost forever. And then I realized, you know, more recently now that I am saving her, like that, you know, this body is her body. Like I'm sitting right here and I'm alive, and that means she's alive. Like that 5-year-old me and that 9-year-old me, that 12-year-old me is alive, and she gets to be saved, even if it's now.
I honestly thought when I saw her last, I didn't know if she was going to make it. I mean, I really didn't know if she was going to survive. It's almost like a a relief because someone's finally listening and cares to listen.
I feel like not necessarily someone should pay for it, but they should be outed. They knew, and they still didn't do anything.
The people in her life, including her father and lawyers or whomever, the people with the power and the influence are the people that she was dealing with. It would have been devastating for the organization, her dad. I think there was probably a lot of people, in my opinion, that didn't want any of that to come out.
I think the story is a valuable story to be heard in the event that others have had the same experience, that they will have the courage to step up, find somebody that they can tell their story to and be heard.
I'm a strong believer in her having her voice and be heard about this. She was shut down before, and it was always such a secret. It's been in the dark for all these years, and it needs light on it.
What do I want? I want them to admit that they left him there, this predator, with how much access for how many years? I want them to use their power, because they have a lot of power, to do something about it, to own their sins. I mean, own their sins. Drag the cross for a little while. This process has been like terrifying. I'm putting out things out there that are not going to make people happy. And I know a lot of people aren't going to want to hear at the same time. I'm being heard. I'm being taken seriously. Like a real investigation is actually happening. I know it will be worth it. Sometimes that worth it part goes on faith that I don't see yet. But that's still worth it too.